Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 89 of Journey into Legends. Today we'll be reading the first book in the Enemy Lines duology, Rebel Dream by Aaron Alston. Rebel Dream was released in 2002, and it is the 11th book in the New Jedi Order series. I've heard some really great things about this duology, so I'm really excited to jump into it. Without further ado, let's read and review. After Zevon Law's two-pronged attack at Coruscant fell apart at Risi in Star by Star, this book brings us back to the planet Borleais, where the Yuuzhan Vong are desperate to push the New Republic farther away from Coruscant. And that's pretty much the only major battle going on in this book. After Edge of Victory and, of course, Star by Star had the New Republic and the Yuuzhan Vong running around fighting over Yagdul, Cern Bidal, Talfaglio, Arcania, Borleais, Risi, and, of course, Coruscant. It was really nice to get a book about one singular major theater of war. And no, Dark Journey doesn't count. Nobody cares about Hapes. Anyways, this was a really fantastic battle, or series of battles, I should say. First and foremost, we had a really interesting set of characters. It's great to see Wedge back in a major way, leading the New Republic's defense. We've also got Jaina, Kip, and Jag flying for Twin Suns Squadron, continuing and improving upon that dynamic from Dark Journey, as well as Jaina's ongoing stint as the Trickster Goddess. Over on the Yuuzhan Vong side of things, we're also introduced to the father of Zevon Law, Chul Kang Law. So far, I find him pretty interesting, especially his dynamic with his son, and I'm excited to hopefully see a lot more of him in the next book. Secondly, there were a lot of really great tactics employed in this battle, specifically the end with Wedge unleashing the full power of the Lusankya on the Vong ground forces. I found it a little strange that the Vong were so taken by surprise by a simple orbital bombardment. You'd think after dropping a moon onto a planet that they'd expect something like this, but either way, it was a fantastic and triumphant moment to end the book on. As I mentioned in my review for Dark Journey, I thought that book was an extremely poor follow-up to Star by Star. The character writing for Jaina fell completely flat, and there wasn't even an attempt to explore the wider implications of the New Republic's greatest defeat, and what comes next. This book is the complete opposite. Whether it's the character writing or the world building, this book was such a satisfying exploration of a post-Battle of Coruscant galaxy. Jaina's internal struggles are written so much better in this book. It's not as shallow as, wow, Jaina's acting a little sketchy, or wow, Jaina's hanging out with Kip Duron, or wow, Jaina's more of a bitch than usual. After the death of Anakin and the supposed death of Jason, Jaina feels sure that she will actually join them in death, and spends a lot of this book keeping her friends and family at arm's length to prepare them for that inevitability. But in later conversations with her mother and Jag, we learn that Jaina is afraid of losing everything and being completely alone. In Dark Journey, Jaina acts uncharacteristically cruel for no apparent reason, and the only explanation is the shallow implication that this is just how she's grieving. This book also made me care about Jaina's relationship with Jag Fell. The little teases we've got since Dark Tide were fun, but I think their dynamic was another thing that Dark Journey mishandled a bit. So it was great to see them finally express their true feelings for each other. Another way that this book served as a great follow-up to Star by Star is its portrayal of a New Republic in complete disarray after the fall of Coruscant. With Borsk Phalia dead, there's no real command structure left. The Advisory Council shows up, with Pwo acting as a self-appointed but not officially recognized Chief of State, and of course he butts heads with Wedge. This, along with the establishment of a secret resistance movement separate from the larger New Republic, headed by Luke and Wedge, really did a great job of showing how splintered and disorganized the New Republic has become after Coruscant. So all of this, plus Jaina's characterization, plus the New Republic striking back at Borleais, plus all the reconnaissance into the situation on Coruscant, plus the overall positive and light-hearted tone of the book, which made it a really refreshing counterbalance to the bleakness of Star by Star, made this a fantastic follow-up. Overall, there's still so many things about this book that I didn't even touch on, such as Tam Elgren's work as a Vong spy, Vicky Shesh's continued scheming, Savong Law's continued struggles with his implant and Nen Yim's involvement, Luke's mission to Coruscant, the inclusion of the Wraiths, and so much more. But overall, as you can tell, I really loved this book. The action, the characterization, the world building, the humor, everything was just so refreshing and well done. I'm really glad that they gave this duology to Aaron Alston because he knocked this first book out of the park, and I'm really excited to jump into the second one. Alright, next we have Star Wars Tales issue 14, which has a whopping 7 stories. Starting with Apocalypse Endor, which is a fun little story about a survivor of the Battle of Endor, recounting the horrors of fighting the Ewoks. And this story did a great job of actually showing how scary Endor was for the stormtroopers, and how deadly the Ewoks really were. There's also some discussion about the wreckage of the second Death Star decimating Endor, and how that's merely Imperial propaganda, which I thought was a pretty fun idea. Our next story is called The Emperor's Court, which is a really meta and non-canon comic about Han Solo being put to trial for Greedo's murder. And there's some fun gags in here about the whole Han shot first controversy. Like always, I'm not a huge fan of the non-canon comedic stories, but this one wasn't too bad. Next we have Urchins, which follows young Anakin and a couple of other street urchins in Mos Espa. When Watto is out for the day, they discover an old lightsaber in his shop, and when they're looking at Sebulba's new pod racer, they accidentally drop the saber into a compartment on the pod racer. When Watto gets back, he is forced to bet against Sebulba in the upcoming race, or else he won't have the money to pay off his debts and he'll lose his shop. But because of the damage the pod racer sustained when the saber fell in, Sebulba's pod comes apart during the race and he loses. Overall, this wasn't the greatest story, the art was very childish, and the plot was boring, but I guess it's cool to see more of Anakin's life on Tatooine. Our next story is Tides of Terror, which follows Kit Fisto and Ayla Secura as they investigate a mysterious nanovirus that is killing clones on Kamino. They eventually catch the rogue Kaminoan responsible and are able to create a vaccine. Overall, this story had some great art, and it's cool to get these characters again, but this story itself was pretty bland. Next, we've got The Lesson, which follows a Jedi named Tuala during the Battle of Geonosis, as she learns a valuable lesson from her master about the importance of a Jedi sacrificing themselves for someone else. Overall, this story was nothing special. The art was mediocre, the characters were forgettable, and the plot was just nothing special. The next story is Smuggler's Blues, which follows Han and Chewie in the cantina as they interview multiple people who want passage on the Falcon, which of course eventually leads them to Luke and Obi-Wan. This one was just another useless little story, there's really no point to it, and the art wasn't very good. Anyways, our last story is called Mythology, in which Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan a story about a Jedi who trained Jedi twins, until eventually they fell in love with a girl and fought over her, which resulted in the death of their master, and eventually even the destruction of the planet. Overall, this was another mediocre story. The characters were very boring, the art was super cartoonish, and the plot was too formulaic for me. Anyways, this was another really mediocre issue of Tales. Although it had 7 stories, none of them really stood out as interesting or memorable. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video where I'll be finishing the Enemy Lines duology with Book 2, Rebel Stand. See ya.